Yes, we have to finish on time, and so we need to really rush through. Please find your name tag and find your seat there. So we're still waiting for the participants to come back. Well, as for the panels, for this panel discussion, Vice President Lee Hee-seung will be the moderator. And we have some important guests joining us as panels, and I'd like to briefly introduce them. Mr. Oh Hyun Hwan is the Director General of the Korea Institute of S&T Evaluation and Planning. He was actively involved in S&T policy planning, R&D program evaluation, and R&D program feasibility studies. He is currently, as mentioned, the Director General of the Office of S&T Policy Planning at KISTEP. Next, Mr. Kim Seok-yoon, Principal Researcher of ETRI. From 1999 to present, at ETRI, he has been working as a commercialization strategy team leader, R&D startup strategy team leader, and a small and medium-sized business cooperation team head, and has been conducting research on technology commercialization and technology startup. Next, we have Professor An Gi-don of Chungnam National University. From March 2009 to present, he has been working as a professor in the Department of Economics at Chungnam National University, and currently serves as the director of the Science and Technology Knowledge Research Institute at the university. And finally, we have group reporter Yoo Jun-young of Money Today, who has worked at ZDNet Korea and eDaily, and currently covers science, venture, and startup fields at Money Today. And with that, I'd like to give the floor to the moderator.
네, 두 번째 세션의 좌장을 맡은 해양.
I'm Lee Hee-seung with KIOST. I'll be chair the session. We only have 26 minutes. Well, we're a little bit behind our schedule, so we have around 20 minutes. Well, I understand that you traveled a long way. My biggest apologies, but I can only give you 5 minutes each due to time constraint. And I will, well, if you have anything additional to say, you can contact me later on. So starting from first, we're going to listen to our panelists before we take questions from the floor. So the questions can be addressed by the speakers first. Please welcome Mr. Oh Hyun Hwan of KISTEP. So please share with us your great insight for the future of KIOST for the next 5 decades. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me to discuss this. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Well, maybe I'm not the right person because I do not have the full insight regarding this field. But anyway, looking at the KIOST's future vision for the next 5 decades, well, in strategy 2 and 3, innovative opening and social contribution, this is something that resonated with us. So for OECD countries, in order to resolve issues of how we can produce more outcomes and performance, well, open innovation is something we need, and mission-oriented policies are something we need. So these two policies are what's highlighted by the OECD in terms of public policies. And I think it's very valuable that KIOST is reflecting on this. We have seen a cut in R&D budget, and the biggest reason is, well, return on investment was not high enough, and that concept was reflected in the slashed budget. So it's not really about the papers, but when it comes to public investment, it doesn't really translate into economic and social investment. So the investment is not really felt by the people in the society. So in this respect, strategy 2 and 3, which deal with innovative opening and social contribution, I believe that truly echoes with our vision and future directions. So with this opportunity, I was thinking about what kind of proposals or suggestions I can make to KIOST, and I can give you roughly 2. So KIOST has become an independent organization from KIST. When I have meetings with KIST, well, now I understand that KIOST has become the KIST in the ocean field. So now it is serving as a comprehensive player in the maritime field, and it has a lot of renowned researchers in the field. So when it comes to scientific policies and ocean policies, I believe that this can be utilized for future policies. And we looked at like more than 10 performances, and first one was about national strategy and contribution to the national policies. Research institutes' participation in policymaking is important, and we could have seen more participation. So I believe that we can provide more support so they can participate in policymaking more actively. The second suggestion is you have different divisions and different players, different bodies. And many times I feel that we can have joint efforts in certain fields. So convergence of different departments, divisions, well, the open innovation within KIOST can be something you can consider. In fighting climate change and in studying underwater resources, well, at the institute level, you can come up with many projects that you can have joint activities and research activities at the KIOST level, at the institute level. And when we have meetings, when it comes to collaboration amongst KIOST researchers, I believe that they already have a good level of cooperation, and this is something we want to continue to see. And last, about the establishment of the KIOST holdings in the public R&D, the strategy is, well, technology transfer is something that we pursue, so it's more of an indirect approach. But when it comes to a more direct approach, including the establishment of holdings, is something we can consider. So with the slashed R&D budget, we can switch to different strategies. And I believe that the establishment of KIOST holdings can be something that can be beneficial. And I hope that KIOST can increase its support for additional R&D. While it does support basic and foundational R&D, but there can be some support for additional R&D, and you can be more generous when it comes to support these additional activities so that you can actually produce some economic and R&D outcomes. So that might be something you can consider.
네.
Thank you. Regarding the R&D budget cut, well, open innovation, the establishment of holdings, well, he touched upon several suggestions.
Next, I'd like to turn to Professor An Ki-dun. Yes, I asked Vice President to give me the floor, to be the next one to take the floor. Well, I have the clock right in front of you, so I am well aware of the time. So earlier we talked a lot about the special district of Taedok, special Taedok zone, because I was quite anxious about the possibility of this Taedok special zone declining and deteriorating. But I also heard that an ocean science special zone is being planned. So when you want to build a cluster, the most important factor would be promoting interaction. And how can we do that? The best way, as we can see in the Taedok special zone, the most important factor is money. KIOST holdings need to be mindful of this. And such an important element was missed out during the presentation by Mr. Park Jun-soo. Why do we need to set up the KIOST holdings? Well, it's not just only about the individual researchers, but for the different research institutes to be able to grow, they do need investment. And this investment cannot just come from the government. One way to find other methods of funding would be establishing a holdings company. And once KIOST Holdings is established, then how can it make money and reinvest that money into research? Well, the key player of the economy is companies, not funded research institutes, not universities. It's the companies that make or break the economy. And only when you connect to the market where there are companies, you can make money. But government-funded institutions cannot do that alone. And that linkage can be found through KIOST Holdings. As we can see in TEDx, and Dr. Kim Seok-gyun may well elaborate. The TEDx researchers have undergone a big change. ETRI Holdings invested in a number of research subsidiaries that were listed, and these researchers have been making billions of money. And that's why the industry, academia, and research institute network has become so much more robust. And so it all boils down to money, and you need to connect to the market. After KIOST Holdings is set up, and you make good money, and you can reinvest that into more R&D to build that virtuous cycle, the most important factor would be facilitating a network. I mentioned earlier that you need to promote the interaction for the cluster to work. So when you establish the holdings company, and after that, you need to spare no effort to ensure that the holdings is a success. And it's not just my personal thought, it is a very clear fact. So to mobilize any and all resources available, well, we do need to do some political efforts as well, because why you need to establish a holdings company, and for the holdings company to be a success, this effort is essential. One example, after next year's general elections is over, at the National Assembly, measure to revitalize KIOST Holdings Company. For instance, I urge that you hold a discussion session on the topic, because then the KIOST and Busan will all come on board. And once the holdings company is established and is a success, this will directly link to the Ocean Science Special Zone. The Vice President mentioned the quantum jump. For KIOST to make that quantum leap, one of the good means would be setting up the KIOST Holdings, and that'll be all for me. Thank you. I know that you have more to say, but you are very mindful of time. Thank you.
마이크를 애트리에
Next, at ETRI, Mr. Kim Seok-gyun at ETRI. I believe that he can talk about ETRI's holdings. Hello, I'm Kim Seok-gyun from ETRI. Well, there are many things I can talk about, but I'm only given 5 minutes. Well, actually, I need more than 50 minutes. But anyway, well, there are so many things that I want to talk about. At ETRI, I've been working for ETRI for more than 25 years. And when it comes to ETRI Holdings, as the first tech holding amongst the government-funded institute, it's been more than 13 years. And just like the establishment team, when we studied the possibility, well, turning this into a project and business in the public fund was not some idea that was quite popular or well known. And up until 10 years ago, many researchers didn't really start up their own business. So when it comes to tech transfer and utilizing patents and patent lawsuits to produce profits, well, these have limits. then what we can turn to is a direct business. Well, I'm a researcher myself, but it's not always easy, and there's limitation to starting up my own business. That's why we established this Atri Holdings, which is an investment holding back in 2010. And at the time, we were met with severe opposition, and the establishment investment was 20 billion. At the time, the money was huge, but initially we were targeting for 50 billion, but this was such a challenging figure, so we wanted to start with 20 billion, and we can have a capital increase of 6 billion annually. But that capital increase of 6 billion is not easy at all. Well, we would have to love to see President Kang at this venue, but anyway, well, that 10 billion, well, will that be the investment paid in capital that you will have for this establishment? But I believe that you can actually consider the possibility of increasing the figure. And starting with the labor costs and investment, including expenses, operating expenses, well, at least we need 1 to 1.5 billion won. And in order, by injecting 10 billion, in order to recover the return, it will take some time. So turning this into business, it doesn't happen in a short term. I was involved in operations of Atri Holdings, and what I was attacked or criticized by them was that I need to liquidate. And before the National Assembly audit, well, we were given 3 questions, and the first one of them was the liquidation of the Atri Holdings, and that really caught me by surprise. But they were valid in their point that we can liquidate Atri Holdings just to save the remaining 10 billion. But we persuaded them, and we told them to be patient a little more. So just like this Atri's case, well, I hope that KIOST Holdings does not stick to a short-term objective, because it will take some time, that's for sure. We started with IT technology, and in other fields, the pace will be even more slower. So it should be something long-term. And another point is that you will establish subsidiaries with the establishment of the KIOST Holdings. So you do the technology investment and cash investment. So regarding the technology investment, well, they were strongly opposed at Atri because they wanted to see their investment returned to them quickly. But with technology transfer, it will take more time. And I told them it will be like a pension. So you can be patient and you wait for 10 years. So 10 million will become 1 billion or 2 billion. And when we did the IPO, it was about 9.2 billion without the technology investment. But, well, a researcher did the calculation, and he learned that he almost had the 4.5 billion as a return. And as we didn't do technology investment, he kind of lost this 4.5 billion. But he did the technology investment in other channel, and he enjoyed huge profits. So even though we persuaded hard to make sure that they do technology investment, they were reluctant, but now it changed hugely, and they know how profitable this can be. And there's nothing wrong with this technology investment. And you can enjoy lots of support, and that will lead to the growth of your organization. So it's not just cash investment, but actually you can consider technology investment. And another point is, well, the KIOST Holdings is not a VC. Well, if it's a general VC, they target short-term profits, and this is not something for the good of the public. But that doesn't mean that we don't care about profits, because you run an organization and you want to be able to make money. So profitability and the public good, these are the two things that you want to pursue so that your organization can be sustainable. And if you think about the longer term, well, I understand that you have lots of things that you want to talk about based on your experience. Well, I believe that maybe later we can have another session. Well, one last thing, just 1 minute. When we established the Atri Holdings, at the time, the president said that after being listed, well, the budget of 700 billion, well, the half of the money can go to Atri Holdings. So what you can think of is that you can take a longer term perspective, thinking that half of the money comes from the KIOST Holdings and 30 more minutes. For that to happen, you need to have a support from an organization. Well, with all the outside experts, well, it really depends on what KIOST can provide in terms of its support to determine the survival of KIOST Holdings. So regarding starting up these holdings and also human resources that can provide support, I believe that we need a separate team of this support so that KIOST and KIOST Holdings can grow hand in hand. So it's more of a collaborative partner instead of just a subsidiary. Thank you.
네, 이거 방금 김석윤 박사님께서 말씀하시는 동안 고개를 크게 끄덕이면서
Yes, Mr. Yu was nodding throughout Mr. Kim's comment, and he is the reporter for Money Today. From the reporter's perspective, what do you think? Just recently, I went to Songdo and met with a company with a CCS technology, and that company was the very first research subsidiary in Ulsan, and I asked him why he was in Incheon. He said that it was not easy to hire anyone in Ulsan, and any tax breaks were available to revenue-making companies. And he felt that there was no actual incentives provided in Ulsan. So there are many innovative clusters that do not perform their ultimate goal and roles. So listening to the Ocean Science Special Zone, I was quite inspired, and I think that you gave much thought to the cluster. It will be different from any other cluster so far. Clusters were mostly built outside cities, but this will be built inside the city, and that makes it much more likely to succeed. Openness, diversity can be tapped into inside city, and in terms of human exchanges, there are benefits. And there are many other rich elements that can support the cluster. Gen Z value the quality of life and their work-life balance. So because the cluster will be located inside a city, the Gen Z will definitely prefer that. And one proposal is that do not confine the special zone to Korea. Maybe I think you need to plan it out to become a global special zone, because in the startup ecosystem, the VC money flow is important, but overseas VCs and bringing in some external elements to the ecosystem will be important. And President Yoon recently went to the Boston cluster. And the Boston cluster was planned to be a global cluster from the beginning, and that made it so successful. Busan hosts the Busan International Film Festival and is bidding to host the World Expo, and has engaged in various PR efforts. So in step with Busan, I think that you can build a global cluster here. And on our last note, regarding KIOST Holdings, building a holding company doesn't automatically come to 180 subsidiaries, because before setting up the holdings company, you need internal organizations that are very robust to support the commercialization of technology. And only when you have a robust pool of manpower will KIOST Holdings Company be able to replenish another pool of talents. And ETRI is doing so well because there are nearly 60 dedicated workforce working on the holdings company. And just 6 people, I think you said you will start off the holdings company with. I think you need to expand that number for the holdings company to be a success. Thank you for being brief, and from the industry perspective, you shared your comments. And today's discussion really addressed the topic of making the KIOST Holdings money-making company, because this year's main topic for the WOF is blue technomy. So for the development of ocean science and technology that we have always heard about conventionally was quite different from what we heard today. We don't have much time left, but we just have time for one question from the floor. Any comments or questions from the floor? Anyone? Please raise your hand if you have a comment or question. Yes, I kept highlighting the importance of time. We have 2 minutes left. Well, if you have any other opinions you'd like to share, please approach us individually. And the panels, we would definitely have another round of discussion at KIOST with you. Thank you for joining us throughout the session. And that is the end of the session. And the MC will give us some concluding comments. Thank you very much. I know that you have more to say, but we did not have enough time, unfortunately, and I apologize. But through the presentations and panel discussions, we had some insightful comments, and I'm sure this will be a very important basis. KIOST does not belong to KIOST itself. It is a representative research institute for Korea. And for the future of ocean science technology of Korea, what we need to do was the main topic that we addressed from a number of angles. We find some homework to do. We find some new goals to achieve. I think that the speakers today we have invited today will definitely be invited back to KIOST for a more in-depth discussion about KIOST Holdings. We will definitely make that happen. I will talk to the president, and the vice president himself has already said so. So I hope that today's session contributes to the development of ocean science and technology as well as KIOST. I know that those of you in the floor were not able to share your comments, but thank you for joining us until the end. We have 30 seconds left. We have a photo session though. So the World Ocean Forum, 1 minute you spend here is 10 times more valuable than any other forum. So I'm sure that you will be bringing 50 times more value than any other forum. So please come forward for a group photo. Thank you.